Dr. Jazz.
Slovenia, is that we went to, is that where
Oh,
Ljubljana is?
yeah. You ever played here? I've never saw you here. You did,
I
man?
played in Ljubljana twice.
Really? Oh, man.
Once was in the 70s.
Wow, part of Yugoslavia. Okay.
Oh yeah, we played it. Um, it must have been a festival.
Yeah, yeah. We have a really long running festival for 60 years already. Who did you play with, by the way?
That's when I was with Freddie Hubbard.
Ah, oh yeah, because you did the stint with him, yeah, in the 70s. Exactly.
We
Wow, man.
Belgrade, Ljubljana, and we ended up in Zagreb.
Zagreb, yeah.
It's a
Wow.
long story because we can tell it during the interview if you want.
Oh, please. Well, let's start with this.
Yeah, there we go. All set.
Cool. But no, what's first of all, how did you get the gig with Freddie? I mean, I wanted to ask you that, but and playing with him, he was notorious for being, yeah, Freddie.
Oh man, so Freddie Hubbard was one of my idols. In the early 70s, we loved his records on the whole CTI
Yeah,
records
yeah.
were happening then. And we were just kids that grew up with rock and roll and got turned on to jazz. And we loved the mixture when we heard jazz and rock together. We loved it. It was really happening then. It was like a new thing. Like Joe Zawinul had been bringing in electronics, ring modulators, and phase shifters and things like that, echoes into even when he was playing with Cannonball Adderley, and then they
Yeah.
started for it. And there was like Herbie Hancock who had the headhunters, and he had the wah wah and the clavinet and the arp. So we loved all that kind of stuff. Freddie Hubbard moved to LA, there was a wave of musicians that moved to LA from the East Coast in the early 70s, which is one of the reasons I decided to come to LA.
Okay.
There was like a migration. It was the Tonight Show was in New York. It had a great band. They moved to LA. Freddie Hubbard moved to LA. Herbie Hancock moved to the West Coast. He was like San Francisco, then LA. Chick Corea was basically based in LA.
Yeah.
Weather Report. So it's like it was a no-brainer. So I get out to LA and I'm looking for these people. And it took me a while, but I eventually met some of the guys that played in Freddie's band. And so the way I got the gig was George Cables was his piano player for years, and George left the band and recommended me.
Really? Wow.
Because I was hanging out with George, and he thought I could cut the gig, and was actually the first white player in Freddie's band. So it was very
Wow.
interesting. It was a bit of a color barrier because of the culture at the time and the music and what cats were into, but I was really into that music, and I had a passion, and they could tell. And so Freddie auditioned me, and the next day we left and went to New York.
Wow.
True
So,
story.
wow. How was he as a band leader to you?
Horrible.
Okay, so the stories are true.
Worst
Okay.
band leader I've ever worked for in my life. But
Oh,
I would say the greatest trumpet player I've ever played with in my life.
yeah, he was, yeah, killing player, but yeah, quite an asshole. What I've heard. I mean,
Well, in all fairness, and I really had a grudge for a lot of reasons for a long time. In all fairness, I've recently understood. I've kind of come up with a new clarity. I actually think he had a mental illness. I mean, I
mm,
think we tend to think that those people are really mean and evil and everything, but actually, I think he was bipolar.
mm,
I
possible.
think
Yeah.
so. And so, looking at it from that lens, he had a sickness, and it was unfortunate because his career had a lot of trouble. He won a Grammy, and he was voted #1 trumpet player over Miles.
Yeah.
And then he went straight down after that. It was like a painful downward spiral. And drugs were involved, but see, often people will use drugs to treat mental illness. It's
But
like
like Jocko and many other guys, or or
he was part of that same scene. In fact,
yeah,
that when we went to New York with Freddie, he had to play with Herbie Hancock, and they recorded it. It's called VSOP. It's a record.
yeah, yeah, sure, I know it. Yeah, obviously.
I was there
Wow.
watching that go down, and Jocko was there too, as well as Al Di Meola and a lot of these other people. So we all had a big jam session that night. Herbie did 3 sets. First set was with the quintet with Ron Carter and Freddie sub for Miles. Second set was the sextet, and the third set was the Headhunters with Ray Parker and Wawa Watson.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, there was a reception, and that's where I saw Wayne Shorter, Jocko, all these guys. And then there was a jam. And I tell you the truth, I was 19. It was my first time in New York, like my second day on the gig with Freddie, and I was afraid to jump on the keyboards. There was a keyboard rig set up, it's Herbie's rig, and I just watched Herbie play 3 sets, mind-blowing. And now Jocko and Al Di Meola, and they're all jamming, and I'm standing there. I wanted to jump on that keyboard so bad. I was a little shy back then.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, if you're 19, makes sense. It's like makes sense. But David, I wanted to ask you these things. I've been. You're so active lately. It's incredible. It's just, it's insane. And I wanted to ask you about your some of the latest stuff because I saw in May you're recording a live gig with Randy Brecker and Steve Ferrone and all these Brandon Fields killing players. I mean, is this going to be a new album also?
Yeah. We're going to actually put it out as an album because over the last years, I've stopped releasing albums. I only put out songs. There's a couple of reasons for it. One of the things is it's a little more work, but I grew up on albums. I love albums, but I've noticed that people don't listen to albums anymore.
Yeah, true.
It's our culture. It's our lifestyle. They're too distracted. We used to sit in a room and listen to a whole side of an album, then we'd flip it over and listen to the other side. That doesn't happen anymore. So the last time I put out a full album, I really feel like people didn't check out all the tunes. So then I said, I'm going to put out songs. So this time we're going to release it as an album just for old time's sake. We're playing 2 sets at the Bitter End in New York, May 11th. And the band is killing. Of course, you said it's a 7-piece band. We have 3 guests. So it's Steve Ferrone, Lenny Castro. We have an Italian guitar player who lives in New York that I quite like, Davide Panozzo. He's really good.
Have to check out.
I met him in Italy when I was with George Benson. He did a show with us for TV, and I've been friends with him ever since. But he's got a nice career going in New York. And then we have Brandon Fields and Randy Brecker, great horn section.
Yeah.
And myself. And so that's the 7 pieces. And then we've got his guest, Osnoy, the guitarist.
Yeah.
Another guitarist, Andy Bassford, who played on my records. He's a reggae specialist and lives in New York. And then the last one was Tommy Bowes is going to sing. So we're going to have 10 people on and off stage.
That's a big one. That's a big
So
one.
it'll come out. Yeah, we'll put out the best of it. We'll make a CD. And then if it's really good, we'll make a volume 2.
Yeah. And it's on your own label, right? I mean, you've been having your own label for quite some time. Like, how come you decided to do that, actually? Yeah.
I'll tell you why. It's a funny story. It's because it was like being dealt a hand. It was like the world just kind of put it on me. Like I always wanted to get signed. I had meetings back when I was young with Columbia Records, Warner Brothers Records. Every record company, you name them, I've had meetings with them. They were going to sign me, but it's a blessing that I didn't because I was allowed to develop the music that I wanted to develop. And I wasn't molded. A lot of the guys I know are being coached and molded.
Yeah.
I remember one night I was making a record with Larry Carlton, and they were saying, record company wants us to make music that you can drink wine to.
Oh my God, man, that's terrible.
That's a record company is going to tell you that, then you're going to do what you want to do. I've watched this go on for decades. I mean, I've seen it, and often the record company has a good perspective. Like they know sometimes, but it's a give and take. And so as an artist, I just never clicked with a label. I never got signed. And so our first deal was with Japan. We did make a deal for my band Karizma in
Yeah,
1983.
yeah, exactly.
But it was only for one album. We did that album. But so through the years, I just ended up with my own stuff. And it dawned on me that I've got my own, like I got my own genre of music. It's like that's why we ended up being a label. So Creechy, what we do at Creechy is everything from heavy rock influenced stuff to acoustic jazz and Latin. I mean, it's not in one lane, and it all kind of goes together. And so I think to kind of come back to your question, after we had done several albums, we got a label deal with a Japanese funding at one point. We did 8 records. So that was the beginning of that's where the logo came from, the beginning of the Creechy label. But then it didn't really go anywhere. They didn't come out really anywhere but Japan. And then I ended up deciding to continue to release them because it's a lot of work to keep. A lot of catalogs will just kind of go into the
Yep.
closet, So to maintain it, it's like having kids. Like you got to nurture it and got to keep on top of it. So that's what I've been doing. I just finally decided, okay, these are my creative works. Like we're starting to say the first Karizma album, Dream Come True, the
Yeah.
second album, Cuba. And they were some incredible stuff on those records. Like
Oh,
Dream Come True had Jeff Porcaro playing drums with
yeah, I
Carlos
know, sure. Dean
and
Parks
Cuba,
on that record, and
yeah.
all
And
those guys.
Cuba had Mike Lando and Steve Lukather
Yeah,
doing duel. And so I'm like, these are priceless things. I'm not going to let them just go into the art in fact, I'll tell you something that brings up something very sad, which is the one record that Steve Lukather and I wrote together, Candyman.
yeah, sure.
That's exactly what's happened to it. It's not being actively released. Somebody brought it to my attention and said, we can't
Really?
find it on
Wow.
streaming. And that's exactly what I didn't want to have happen because you make this music, you work hard on it, you want it to live on. So I ended up, to kind of get back to the question, I ended up in 1995, I finally decided to press CDs for the first time. I never wanted to deal with being a record company. I just wanted to make the music. But I finally had to, it became, at that time, it became easier, more accessible to get to pressing plants. They were uh, making it possible for consumers, because it used to be that the pressing plants only worked for the record
Yeah.
companies. It was so we pressed up Cuba, and it became our first release. And then we did Michael Landau's Tales from the Bulge. I did a partnership with him and his manager, and then released that. And then little by little, it was the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one. I think now we have about probably 30
Yeah, it's a big catalog. Yeah.
physical CDs, and then we've got another, who knows, 50 to 100 digital releases. So it's a lot of work, but I'm very happy now because it's like I really, and I'll close it with this, that I realized that I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do. That
Yeah.
was an interesting thing because I thought, wait a second, I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do 50 years ago when I came to LA. I'm making my own music, I'm recording it, I'm performing it with the people that I want to do with.
That's it. Yeah.
Crazy. I'll
That's
tell you
it.
one thing. The thing that makes it all work is the people that come out to support you. Because if you could do all of that, if nobody wants to hear it, not good.
True. True. No, but also the players. You hooked up through your career with some of the world's best players. I mean, on any instrument, it's Dream Come True already has such a cast of players. It's just insane. It's when you look at the guys, it's like, whew, Steve and Taglioni and all these guys, and it's like, man, killing band.
I consider myself so fortunate because I think it had to do with when I came to LA in 1974. A lot of these musicians that today you can mention certain names and go to like Nathan amazed of any Call of Duty or Steve Lucas or Michael. When back in then, they were just kids, and I
Sure.
watched it all happen. I was kind of a part of it all blossoming. So I feel very fortunate. I have to pinch myself because you're talking about players. It's like in the last couple of weeks, I'm going like, damn, it's like I had Joe Bonamassa in a week ago.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he's a wonderful player, a
Oh,
wonderful guy.
yeah.
And I'm recording these guys on my music. And then the next week I had Paul Jackson Jr.
Mm.
We were doing 2 songs, and I was I was saying, so what a treat the people. I've got a Simon Phillips is going to play one of my next gigs. I'm like, I get to play with Simon. I mean, it's like, come on, man.
Yeah. It's a privilege. I mean, you know, you worked your ass off, obviously, and practiced and it's not a self-given thing many times. But still, yeah, it's like, it's incredible that you got to do that. We got to do that, actually. I mean, it's to play with all these monster players. And but I wanted to ask you about Charisma. How did it happen? I remember one of the first records I heard you on was Document by Charisma, and I remember playing that one and writing out heads, a lot of odd meters, and I'm a huge Vinny fan and Mike Landau fan, and I mean those two guys are just, that's an insane record, by the way. Like, but how did you start the Charisma project? And I think it's quite an under the radar band, to be honest, although probably Fusion fans know it, but still, I think in Europe, I give it many times to my students, and they're like, "Man, what is this?" And like, what's the story behind that project?
Well, thank you for keep giving it to your students. Here's the whole history of Charisma. When I was getting ready to move to Los Angeles, I came from St. Louis, Missouri, which is
Oh, wow.
where I developed my career, started my career. Um, when I was when I was coming out to LA, I had a vision. I just had a creative vision that I was going to start a band with other young musicians, and I wanted dynamic musicians that were exciting and fun, and that we were going to play music kind of like this stuff I mentioned to you, Headhunters, Return to
Yeah,
Forever, it was like happening. They called it fusion, which ended up being kind of a bad name. I hate the names that they put on music because music's music. But my idea was I'm going to find these young guys like me, because in St. Louis, I played with a lot of older guys that really old jazz guys. So I wanted to start, I thought there's going to be these young guys. There wasn't a lot of guys my age in St. Louis that really wanted to play jazz or fusion when I was there. It was like they were rock and rollers, Zeppelin, you know, whatever, Creedence Clearwater, Black Sabbath. I mean, in my group where I grew up, jazz was not even very known, but I just kind of found my way into jazz through rock and roll, got hooked on jazz, met jazz scene in St. Louis, came out to LA, thought I'm going to meet young people. So Carlos Vega, the original drummer of
yeah,
Charisma, is my first connection to everybody in LA. I met him in St. Louis through mutual friends. And so when I came to LA, I wanted to play with Carlos, and I liked playing with Carlos, so I wanted to start the band with Carlos, and then I needed to find the other musicians. Now, ironically enough, you mentioned Steve Taglioni.
yeah.
He was on my first gig in LA. I came out to LA on a Thursday, and Sunday night I was playing with Steve Taglioni.
Wow.
I was a very lucky thing. And Steve is a genius. He's
Oh,
amazing. Guys
obviously.
that aren't familiar with him, he was in a band called Caldera, which was
Yeah, yeah,
really good.
sure.
And but anyway, so I wanted Steve to be in the first band, but he didn't want to drive. He lived in Riverside, which is about 90 miles. He didn't want to drive into LA and rehearse and stuff if at that particular time, if there was no money involved. He was looking for paying gigs, and I was 5 years younger, and I just wanted to play. So he wouldn't be in the band in the first band, but we got him later to come in the band. But he wouldn't do it. So found a trumpet player named Ralph Rickard, and I'd seen another band play, and he was really good, reminding me of Freddie Hubbard. He became our trumpet player, and we had percussion and bass, no guitar. And that first band started, and basically I was just writing tunes, and we were rehearsing, and then we found a place to play, and people loved us, and we played, and it was kind of catching on. So that's how it all started. And I'll tell you one other thing. The reason it started then was because I couldn't find the music I wanted to play.
Mm,
I was getting on all different kinds of weird gigs, top 40 gigs, oldies gigs. Um, there were bands that in LA at the time, there were a lot of bands that played stuff like El Chicano and War and kind of like I don't know, Santana. It was like
hmm
that kind of stuff. But I wanted to play this fusion. So I said, well, I guess if I can't find any place to play it, I'll start my own group. And that's how it all started. Now, fast forward, Carlos and I got discovered through that group, and then we went off to do other stuff. He got Caldera, I got with Freddie Hubbard, and then I brought him over to Freddie Hubbard later. But then after all that, we reformed Karizma, and Carlos says, you got to bring this guy, Mike Landau, in.
mm.
And see, Mike was very young, living at his parents' house,
Wow.
but um, Carlos had played with him in a high school band, and he was just a very talented guitar player. They used to call him Drix because he was really into Hendrix, and he could play. He learned all the Hendrix. A lot of guys couldn't learn the Hendrix stuff. Mike, because of the left hand and all that
Yeah.
stuff, left-handed guitar. Mike learned that stuff, and he was a great guitarist. So Carlos, thanks to Carlos told me to have him join the band. We got him in the band. Then later, Vinny came to see us play. He was new in town. And when Carlos was getting so busy, we got Vinny to sub for him. And then
Oh,
Vinny
wow.
took.
Interesting.
So both Mike and Vinny kind of were showcased in Charisma. In a lot of ways, it was a showcase for their talents. We'd rehearse every week, 2 or 3 times. We'd play at the
Oh,
Baked Potato every week. People would come out and line up to watch them, and then they'd rave about them. So they had a really great showcase
yeah.
playing with me, and I'll always be happy that I was able to contribute that to their careers. And but then you go back to the thing about Charisma. We still didn't make our first record for like another 5 years,
Wow.
but we finally got our first record out. And I'll tell you a quick story about that. Toto was happening. Journey had put out some cool records that to me were fusionish.
Yep.
Steve Smith, the drummer, was a buddy of all of ours. And he had played with Jean-Luc Ponty and had gone to Berkeley with some of our friends. So I want to do something like Toto, Journey, and all that really progressive rock, Genesis with vocals and with a lot of stretching. I made some demos. And fortunately, a friend of mine who was a manager of a studio got let me have the studio time. I never paid for it. That's amazing.
Oh, wow.
When it was all done, I said, "What do I owe you?" He goes, "Don't worry about it."
Wow. That's rare.
God bless him because he's the guy. Without that demo, I would have never gotten the first deal. I wouldn't have gotten the first deal.
Wow.
So we got that first deal with Japan. And what's interesting is on the demo, I found a guitar player. I'm curious to see if you know who he is. He was a young guy like me. We were working together, and I really liked him. He had a very organic, very ballsy rock sound, and his name was Tim Pierce.
No, don't know
Remember
him.
Tim Pierce?
Tim Pierce. No, I have to check him out.
So he's in another bubble. You have to check him out. He has a record called Guitar Land, which was
Oh,
very
I'll write it down.
popular. Um,
Tim
what
Pierce.
happened with Tim was he really got busy in a certain lane with rock and roll, and he did a lot of touring, and then he did a lot of recording, and now he has a video channel. He's actually quite popular teaching on YouTube.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He's got a very big YouTube presence right now. That's all his main focus, and so he doesn't want to come out and play anymore. But back then I brought him in on the demos because we had this really heavy rock sound, and Tavoloni played on the demos, Carlos played on the demos. We got the deal. We get ready to make the first record, and I'm friends with the guys in Toto, so I invite Paige and Lukather and Jeff Porcaro to play on the record. And so that was a blessing, and they were very gracious. And so you're a guitarist, so
Yeah.
you know Steve. Back in those days, Steve played through a Princeton and a Deluxe.
Yeah, well,
He had no
different
rack.
sound. Yeah, yeah. Yep.
That's my favorite sounds of Steve, the two amps. Bob Bradshaw, you familiar with him?
No.
The racks.
Oh,
So
yeah.
he
Okay.
made
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
they're called the Bradshaw racks. Anyway, he was hanging out in the scene and making these. He had this idea to make a guitar rack, and the first one he made was on an AV rack. It wasn't even an audio rack. It was like a video cart, and he put that compressor in there and and he brought it in. Buzz Featon, you
Yeah,
familiar
sure.
with?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Buzz, I know. Yeah, Buzz.
They were playing somewhere, and he came in, and that was the first rack. It was the prototype, and then after that, Lando got one, Lukather got one. Everybody got the Edge from the
YouTube.
YouTube.
Yeah.
One by one, every guitar player, and Bob's thing blew up. He sold to somebody, but just to get back to that time, it was a early '80s before. It was a little more organic. We recorded on 24 track tape.
Yeah.
We didn't use a click. No one ever would use a click. That was like no. And nowadays we always use the
Oh
click
man,
because
yeah, yeah.
it makes it easier for editing.
Yeah, but this, something is many times gone, I think. Uh,
It's
like
sad.
even if like two beats per second drop of a tempo or going, you can
It's
feel it, I
sad.
think.
Yeah, it's sad because as we talk, I remember it was just a different scene. Like we
Yeah.
just played music and there was none of this copy and paste. But we're in a different world now. I use the tools now to try to make good sounding music. So I'm not on any, I don't have a problem with anything. It is what it is. I don't have a problem with streaming. The people that bitch about streaming just don't have enough streams.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
if you get enough streams on streaming, you will make some money. It's just you got to get more streams. Like back in the day, you could sell you know, you could sell 10,000 records and that'd be a decent thing.
Yep.
Today, you could have 10 million streams and it doesn't really add up as much as you would think it would.
It's something. Yeah, absolutely.
But I feel very fortunate that I've learned the streaming thing. We've got a distributor called The Orchard. It's the largest independent distributor. So we have a great relationship with them. We upload new songs as often as possible. We have a new one coming out next week, and we have another new one coming out the next month. And we do that because we just want to put the music out. It's
Yeah, yeah.
there's no strategy like we're trying to make money. We're just recording the music and putting it out, and then and then when you say that you're enjoying the music, that's what makes it all
Yeah, yeah.
worthwhile.
And it's nice to see that you adapted, You still being part of the old guys basically when, LPs were made and now you figured out how it works and that's fantastic, that's how it should be, right? Not.
My buddy Steve Porcaro has just finished his record. It's coming out later this year.
Mm.
He's been working on it for a while, and he's going to be mastering next week. And we were talking about it yesterday and he's going to master the whole thing as a album. But I'm just kind of, as I told you earlier, I don't think anybody listened to a whole album. But we're going to make the Live at the Bitter End an album just for nostalgia's sake, and we're going to submit it for the Grammys too. We'll see if they'll consider it.
Yeah. Now the band sounds killing like this. I think really looking forward to it. I mean, I still love CDs. I still buy CDs on gigs when I go to players, and I just love the whole experience. Like reading the liner notes, even though streaming makes it easier. Obviously, it's like if you don't have an album by someone, you just type in a name and you have. It's easy, but it's just this romantic idea of pouring yourself a glass of whiskey and putting on a CD and like, okay, shit, that's nice music. And
guess what? We're going to be releasing a book, and it's 12 by 12. It's the size of an LP.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the companion to this last series of recordings I did called Outside the Box.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
6 CDs. The book is going to be just the same as a record cover.
Ooh, okay, nice.
Big fonts, big, not CD size, but big fonts, pictures, credits, stories, and it's going to cover those 6 albums. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, It's nice. It's nice, right? If you listen to music and you read the story and see pictures of recording sessions. I don't know. I always loved
Yeah.
those things, you know. And
I don't think anybody's done this because when I was
no,
developing the idea, one of my team said you should put all the CDs in with the book. I go, no, 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 no. It'll make it too heavy, too cumbersome, too expensive. No, no, no. We're going to just sell the book, and the book goes along with the streaming. So you put up the album on Spotify or Deezer or iTunes, whatever, title,
yeah,
Amazon, and then you can have a 12 by 12. It's a record is like 12 and a quarter by 12, of course. So I'm excited about it.
yeah. It's nice. I miss those moments. You know, just I have like encyclopedias. I have it here like all of these this jazz record. I just love going through these books. Like just I don't know. Beside being a musician, just the whole history of the music. It's part of jazz. I think this oral tradition and pictures and stories and
Oh
that
yeah.
that's what I'm doing these interviews just to listen to you guys a bit and hear your experience. I mean that's so important. And
Some of the stories I've heard are crazy.
okay, I believe you could easily write a book, yeah, about everything you've done. So, but David, I wanted to ask you about going back to some guitarists, and one interesting one is George Benson, right? I guess.
Oh yeah.
How did you meet George and working with him? I mean, he was probably a superstar already when you start working with him, right?
Yeah. Well, it's quite interesting. The first time I saw George, I saw him at the Lighthouse with his band before the Breezes album. So he would
Mm.
drive station wagon, staying in motels. And then Breezin hit and it blew up. And then I was doing a gig with Freddie Hubbard once, Howard University, and we were opening for George.
Mm.
And we were out backstage and Freddie talked to George. I was standing there listening, I was kind of trying to pick it up. And so then fast forward to 1986, a lot of my friends were playing in George's band, and Jorge Dalto, who was his main piano player, was sick. He had cancer and he had to leave the tour and they needed a replacement. So my name got put in the hat and I got called to come in. And the first night I played with George, and we had very little rehearsal and very few charts, was recorded on video
Mm.
and it's available. You can see it on YouTube and everything. It's 1986 in
That's live at
Montreux.
Montreux. That one. Ah, wow. Okay, yeah, I know that one. Sure.
That's my first gig.
Oh shit. Okay. Wow.
We only rehearsed 4 songs. I was flying by the seat of my pants, but that's how I've survived as a musician. I have an interesting story. I mean, I didn't go to college. My family didn't support me being a musician, and my dad was against it and everything. So, I came out to LA right out of high school. And so I've always tried, it's always been about survival. And so, that's how you get through some of these things. Like you got to get through it. That's like an adrenaline. So I got through that first night with George and he was very, very nice and gracious. And I finished that tour with the band. And then another tour came by and we did another tour. And then he started to notice that I had a lot of jazz abilities. And so he would start to feature me more and have me play when he had some jazz greats would join us. Then we did one little jazz gig with he brought in Lenny White, who was one of my heroes from
Really?
Turner.
Oh man. Whew.
Yeah, it was George, me, Lenny, and the bass player that was with George Stanley, and we did some jazz oriented things. And then, I lasted 5 years with George, and then I had to stay off the road because I had all these incredible things happening locally in LA. I couldn't be out on tour. That's when that's around the time that I got my label deal to do the eight albums, and that's around when I had this project with Steve Lukather and Jeff Porcaro called Los Lobotomies.
Yeah, yeah.
Right around that time, we did a record. We were doing more gigs, so I left George 1990, and I stayed away for 10 years. But I went back with him twice since, and today he's like a brother. He's like family to me.
Mm.
I just wrote a song for him, and we just recorded it. I'm actually going to be talking about guitar. Next week, I'm putting Ray Parker on that song.
Ooh, okay, that's amazing.
Then I'm going to send it to George to see what he thinks. George is an amazing guitar player, and his roots
I
are in.
know it's
Yeah.
Giblet Gravy and all those early. I wish he did another record like that early stuff where he could really, because he can play like crazy, right? But
Unbelievable player. But you know what's interesting? I agree with you. I think, and I've talked. There's another gentleman who produced George, lives down the street from me, and we're friends. We all talk about wishing we could produce a George record that was like what you're saying
yeah,
in that vein. I think that's where his biggest audience is today. But it's interesting. And one go back to what we were talking about earlier about the record company. Remember
yeah.
when we were talking about um, Larry Carlton? The same thing with
Oh,
George and their brothers. They're sending him songs and do this, do that, putting with different producers. So you see what's interesting is, and I've been involved in pop music and work with people that play on hit records and everything. A lot of my friends have gold records. I don't have any gold records hanging up. But what I'm going to say is that you get the record company they want to manufacture something that's going to sell a lot of records. And then originally, I think what happened was somebody wrote something or did something and it just sold a lot of records.
mm,
They weren't trying it. They just did something and it caught on. Then the record company's like, well, we want to recreate this. I think it's coming from a little bit of greed, honestly. I think it's
mm,
coming like, well, we want to create music that's going to make a lot of money. Well, guess what? I want to create music that's just going to be good music. And if it can make some money, that's great. And I think, honestly, I think people do appreciate good music.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
So I'm not going to bag on record companies because they've done a lot of good stuff, but this is where we're talking about, like we're saying with George Benson, where they definitely pushed him to recreate "Turn Your Love Around" and "Give Me the
yeah,
Night."
yeah.
There's a song on one of the records. They put him with Kashif, who was a producer, and it was like they put him with Kashif, and they did a song, and it was like kind of like a copy of "Turn Your Love Around." It was like, and it didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But a lot of bands have tried to recreate a hit single. I mean, it's not there's nothing wrong with it, but at the end of the day, um, if George was able to do an instrumental guitar record kind of in the CPI vein, and we talked about it, like put him with Ron Carter, Herbie Hancock, Harvey Mason. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Something
Get
like Take Five. I teach Take Five, like by George version, to every student. That solo. It's like it's insane. It's so good. And
Have you seen Take Five live at Montreux from my first gig?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know that YouTube record. Yeah, I mean the YouTube video.
That is one of the most
Yeah,
insane guitar performances I've ever seen.
he's he's killing it on. Every
That's
time I heard him play Take Five, it's like it's
that's what he was playing like when I joined him. Yeah,
mm, yeah,
he was in his 40s.
yeah.
When I joined him, he was in his 40s. I was 29. Now I'm 68, so it's 39 years later, and he's just turned 82. So, but he's truly a master. And let me tell you this:
Absolutely.
listen to George comp on Jimmy Smith record when George is playing the chords behind
Oh,
Jimmy
okay.
Smith.
I have to check it out.
He is so tasty. We were driving in his car in Arizona last time I visited him about a year ago exactly. He lives in Arizona. I went up there to visit him and hang out. He's playing me a Jimmy Smith thing in the car, and I'm listening to it, and Jimmy Smith's tearing it up. I go, George, your comping is so perfect. Like you're never getting on top of him or interfering with. You're just complimenting him. And George goes, "That's what I'm doing. That's what comp is.
Yeah, exactly.
Compliment."
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's never too late. Let's hope. Maybe one day still he will. It's like you mentioned Larry Carlton. Like I heard him the first time with Hejira on Joni Mitchell's record, And I was like,
Oh
man, this
yeah.
is insane. Who is this guy? And then I bought some of his other records. I was like, I like the guitar playing, but it's just like you said, kind of this not fusion even. And I was like, man, shit, I need more of that, Larry. Like, how to find that. And
Well, the
so,
story
yeah,
about Larry is simply this. He was one of the greatest studio players,
yeah,
and he'd go into a Steely Dan session or a Joni Mitchell session and just give it an incredible thing that worked perfectly. Then they said, well, he needs to make his own record, but he really hadn't been an artist. He was more of his role was more of a
contributing.
session guitar player, a specialist. Like everybody has different roles.
Yeah,
Now I did see him perform in Nashville. He lives in Nashville. I did see him perform a couple of years ago in Nashville, and it was a great show. He did a great show, and he played a lot of the Steely Dan songs
mm,
he played on, like Josie and Don't Take Me Alive and stuff. And I'm like, see, that's at the end of the day, it's hard to have your own sound as an artist if sometimes it's like that's what truly makes an artist an artist. You listen to Chameleon by Herbie Hancock. It's like that's Herbie,
yep,
or Butterfly by Herbie Hancock, or Actual Proof, or Maiden Voyage, Dolphin Dance, or a lot of those songs. It's Herbie Hancock. He's an artist. He's a great composer. Um, George composes, Benson composes, but he did a lot of other people's songs, like
yeah,
Take Five.
yep,
This Masquerade was Leon Russell. Reason was Bobby Womack. 6 to 4 was Phil Upchurch.
yeah, oh yeah,
So I'm really happy that I know a lot about this music. I've got a lot stored up in my head about who did what and how it happened. But for me, I want like going back to Karizma. I wanted to create my own music. I was influenced by
yeah, yeah,
Return to Weather Report, Crusaders, Brian Auger, Oblivion Express. I love
yeah.
Brian Auger. He's out here with me. I saw him recently. He's a wonderful guy. I got some Brian Auger stories. He's got stories you
Oh,
won't
he's a
believe.
great player. Yeah, yep.
He used to open for Led Zeppelin.
Really, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, well, I'll tell you this. I'll just tell you very quickly. They asked Brian Auger to let Jimi Hendrix join his band in the beginning when he first went to England, and Brian said, "I already have a guitar player."
Oh man. Okay.
But he stayed friends with Jimmy for the rest of the life. But the thing is I have original music and I quite like it, but I learned somewhere along the way that I had to try to get people interested in listening. So that's when I started doing more cover songs. But I do my cover songs with my own arrangements,
Yep.
and that's where I kind of try to. But in the end of the day, I'm still doing my originals, and I think people like them. But it's hard. What I'm saying is, you have to somehow get them to get interested in your music.
Yeah. Yeah.
Helps if you have a hit song on the radio. Recently, I had one of my original songs on the radio. It's been playing for the last 3-4 months on the satellite radio here, Sirius XM, and they play it every day. So I'm very happy about that.
Mm. That shuffling one or no?
This one's called Rainy Day Song
Oh, okay. I thought that's shuffling. I listened to shuffling today. Like,
with Martin Barr.
yeah, and Mike Miller on guitar, I think. Or,
Yeah,
I mean,
we rushed that out because of Mike's passing. We
yeah,
want
man. I did like in this interview with Mike, and then you know I wanted to send him the link, and then I saw he passed away. I was like, man, what he was one of the most underrated guitarists ever, like really, and such a nice guy.
yeah, and a genius, a true genius.
Yeah,
We had a few memorials for him with his family and his friends, and I'll tell you, he was a genius. He played in Charisma after Mike Landau, but he's played with everybody. But he has his own stuff. But he was on this cut, and he's also on my version of Asia too. Did a really nice version with him,
funny, funny.
and we're going to do that in New York. We'll have both guitar players. We'll have Oz and Davide. Um, but back to guitar players, one of the guys I worked with that I thought was incredible and also maybe not underrated is Chuck Loeb. Are you familiar with
Oh
Chuck
man,
Loeb?
sure. Oh, he did some incredible stuff. Yeah,
He was a pretty fierce player,
yeah.
and he was a New York cat, and he played like, more from the jazz world, but when I heard him on the radio the first time, I go, who is that? And I looked him up because he reminded me of George because he had that bebop sensibility. And he plays on my version of Rainbow Seeker, was one, and then he died very shortly
Also,
after
yeah,
that.
yeah. Quite, yeah.
Really surprised me. And I think you mentioned Larry Coryell. He came and played with us a bunch.
Really, also, wow.
And
Okay.
George Benson and him were friends. George told him to move to New York when he was from Seattle.
Hmm.
George met him on the road and goes, "Man, you should come to New York, man."
I wanted to ask you, I mentioned document before, and that version of Charisma is for me like killing. How did you, there's a lot of happening there in the arrangements and a lot of odd meters, and Vinny is like, I mean, all of you are just like nailing it. Like, how did you become comfortable also playing that music? It's obviously a lot of practice, but it sounds really effortless, even though it's a lot of tricky stuff happening there.
Well, that's a great question. So I'm glad you brought back because I never answered. You brought up document earlier, and I started with the history of
Oh
charisma.
no, yeah, that's,
I didn't get that far up, but the band. So Vinny and Landau and I were playing a lot in 1978, 1979. So then, now we're talking about 20 years later in 2000. Vinny had been invited to play at a drum festival in Koblenz, Germany called Drums Only that they do every other year. And so he wanted us to go. He wanted me, Mike, and Neil Stubbenhaus to go with him and perform
okay.
drum festival. That's how it all started. That's how this whole document thing started. It's um, so Charisma. If you anybody that's listening, the CD Lost and Found. And by the way, we put the credit. I think a lot of the liners we have up on our website, but davidgarfield.com. But on the liners, there's the entire history of the band, every version of the band, who was in it, what year, because we had about 15 different or
Yeah, yeah.
16. So the band had gone through a lot of changes, and in I think in 2000 we weren't even active. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we played a few gigs around here and there in 95, 96, 97. But when Carlos Vega died in 98, I don't think we did anything after that.
Hmm.
Vinny he's off and doing
Yeah,
Sting,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah.
Sting spent like a whole year on the road. So I don't think we did anything from 98 since Carlos died, 98, 99. And then in 2000, Vinny's had this thing. So we said, okay, let's do this gig. And so Vinny had a song he wanted to do from his record, the Attack of the 1,000 Pizza, the 2,000 pound pizza or whatever it's called. Oh, I'm Tweaked. That's what it's called. I'm Tweaked. And so he did that. He wanted to do that song. We wanted to do a couple songs from Mike Landau's record, which I had produced,
Yeah.
Vinny played on. And we wanted to do some of the Charisma songs. And then I brought into that the E minor shuffle, which was
Yeah.
something I recorded. It wasn't a Charisma song, but it seemed like a great song for us to play. It's a David Pate song. So I brought that in too. So we did, you know, E minor shuffle was Page's song, which I had recorded on Tribute to Jeff. Landau had the song called I'm Buzzed and Judy. And then we did Toast for Eli, Johnny Swing, which were on Charisma, or Johnny Swing was on Landau's record, yeah. Toast for Eli and a few other songs were from Charisma Records. And so the Odd Time one in particular is called Heavy Resin.
Yeah, that's from Dream Come True, right? I mean, that's from
Yes,
83. Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah,
It's one, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not 6 and 5, it's 3, 4, and 5, 8. Because when we wrote this stuff, and when I first wrote it, Carlos was the drummer. Then when Vinny came in the band, Vinny
yeah.
adapted. Vinnyized it.
He did the Vinny stuff. Yeah.
But the thing about it is, it's supposed to groove.
Yeah.
So I must digress. When I first came to LA, there was a big odd time thing. First of all, Zappa was LA based, and he had all the greatest LA studio guys with him in the studio. There was a guy named Don Ellis.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard of him. He
Yeah.
had a
Yeah.
big,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so he did his thing was odd times, like odd times. They did a song. They did a song in '33 something called Bulgarian Bulge, and so in Charisma from the beginning, we always had some kind of an odd. It was kind of a thing from the '70s. We had a song. We had a song that was like in 13. I think we had a song of 7. We had a song of 5, whatever. But then when I came up with Heavy Resin, what we always wanted, what the thing was, we always wanted an odd time to groove. That
Yep.
was our criterion. It shouldn't just be odd time for the sake of odd time.
Absolutely.
There were certain bands around LA that would call, and they would call you to play, and their music would be odd time, and it would be like, it just
Yeah.
made
Yeah.
no sense.
Yeah.
So Heavy Resin was an odd time song. Vinny's song, I'm Tweaked. It's very interesting. I don't know if you've analyzed it,
No,
but
I don't remember that. I mean,
it's the one that goes dun 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 dun, and it shifts. The time shifts.
okay. Yeah. 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 I have to re-listen. Yeah.
That
But
song,
I know.
that song will make you nauseous. I mean, it's like a friggin' bad acid trip. You know the song I'm talking about?
Yeah. 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 I have to re-listen to it now after the interview. But I know exactly.
Well, we did it. It's not on document, but we did it in a video for the Modern Drummer. It's on Vinny's record, and Landau played on it. I didn't play on it, but that song was in 4/4. But what he does is he goes, "Ah, ah, ah, ah."
Yeah. Yeah. He's kind
So
of
he shifts.
skips the kind of beat. Yeah.
It's an imaginary. It would sound like it was, 23/8 and then 25/8, but it's actually all 4/4, and it's really hard to play.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so all the keyboard parts from the record were just kind of miscellaneous keyboard parts. So we recorded them onto a DAT and we used that as like a backing track. So for me, so we had the sounds, those electronic sounds. So for me, Vinny told me just play funk on the clavinet. So I'm playing in 4/4, and the band is shifting.
That's
And it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my
of
life.
course. Yeah. I mean, oh,
And one night, because they would have trouble staying together, like they would be off from each other. One night they got it right, and I stayed on the floor, and I heard them shifting. I heard it as like, the second 16th, second 16th note, the fourth 16th note, the third 16th. Anyway, but to go back to your question, we had played over the years. That's what came in handy. We had played so much in 1979, 1978, all through the 80s,
yeah.
that when we did that tour, we had a lot of chemistry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we play together easily. It was easy. It's always easy for me to go play with any of my musicians because I have a history. So I think that's why it sounded so easy, because we had the history and everybody had played on all these records. But Vinny and I just love to jam together. Like if I can jam with Vinny, that was a magical thing. The same thing with Carlos. I was a drummer in my high school band, stage band, and I always had a way of connecting with the drummers, and
Yeah.
had a great connection with Jeff Porcaro and all the drummers I play with. But in particular with Vinny and I, as you heard on
Oh,
Nothing Personal, and then Palladium.
I love your connection. Yeah. I mean, anything with Vinny is you mentioned Sting before. Even if he plays that tune 7 days and it's in 5, and he plays, it's like, ooh, damn.
Vinny plays across the bar.
Yeah, and I love that, and it's so cool. And I can imagine Sting, playing the bass and singing. I saw footage of live, and Vinny, sorry for the word, like fucking around there and Sting playing and keeping that line in five. And like, oh shit, man, that's you're gonna fly out. That's amazing,
He
yeah.
could lose a band. He could lose a band, like
Yeah.
lose track of where he is. But you know, um, there's a song that Vinny wrote and we recorded on the Steve Tavoloni record called "The Burning."
Mm,
I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's one of my 8 records on that label that I did. It's the Steve Tavoloni. There's some classic and Holdsworth's on that record
really?
too,
Oh
like
shit, I have to find it. I'm a huge Holdsworth fan, by the way.
Landau. Oh
Okay.
yeah, yeah. It's called Blue Tav, Steve
Oh yeah,
Tavoloni.
I have that record. I mean, I have to re-listen to it. Yeah, obviously.
So on there, Holdsworth's on the song called Tsunami, which is
Yeah,
ridiculous,
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
But the song called The Burning is something Vinny wrote. And when you listen to it, you won't have any clue where one is. There's no clue. So when we were recording it, we were getting ready to record it. I got together with Vinny, and these are in the days of the old Macintosh, the original Macintoshes. He
Okay.
had put the disk in to load the operating system and everything. I'm watching to see he wrote it in Performer, and this is before digital, just Performer MIDI. And I'm trying to where is the beat? And it's a slow 3. It's 1, 2, 3. And it never changes. But you would never hear that if you listen to it, you know. Um, I'm going to try something just for fun. Bear with me. It may not work, but let's try it. Um, uh, because let's just see if I can get this. Uh, but he's such a genius, and
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
here it is.
Yeah, yeah, the music doesn't go through. I think it's maybe Zoom is blocking it or somehow. I don't know.
Doesn't come through.
Nah, but I'll find it. I have the record, so yeah, yeah, yeah.
Check it out. But
Really
the
listen.
time the song, there's like 3 or 4 different sections of the song where the groove completely changes. It's like 1, 2, 3, then it's like dun, 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 then it goes, and but so he's a genius, and he hears rhythms in a way that most people don't hear,
Mm,
you know,
yeah.
and that's why he's so great. So, did you know we're doing a 50th anniversary show at the Baked Potato for Karizma?
No, when is that? Wow, man.
May 29th.
Oh, you should record that somehow, video at least, or
I think they have a system set up for that. I'm glad you mentioned that. It's it's going to be a who's who of who played in Charisma, although
wow.
unfortunately neither Vinny or Mike will play this time.
Ah, okay. Ah, that's a shame.
But we've got about, I don't know, 20 people. The band has had a lot of people over the years, but Chad Wackerman will play and
Ooh.
Tom Scott will play. Dean Park will be there. We're going to have this drummer that I just met. He hasn't played in the band, but I feel like he should play. His name is Danny Carey.
Oh yeah,
He's from
sure. Oh, wow. Okay.
school.
Ooh,
And I've been hearing a lot about him. And I just played with him a couple weeks ago. And I just said, well, you should come play a
he
couple of
will
the songs.
fit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he fits
He's
that
a
music perfectly.
guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I heard he just played with King Crimson. They're one of my
Yeah,
favorite bands.
yeah, he's a killing drummer. Oh,
So
fantastic, man. Beautiful.
just to recap, so we're doing lots of live gigs. We're doing lots of recording. We rehearse here in the next room. I have a very nice setup for rehearsing, very cozy, and it's all set up. The drums are set up, bass amp,
Perfect.
microphone. So music is basically the answer right now to me, as I look and pushing towards 70 and years of surviving as a musician, I realized that the biggest payoff has been that I've been able to live my life in music with the
Yeah,
community. And you mentioned some of the people, like, I've gotten to see incredible music. I've gotten to see Miles Davis up close many times and people, Weather Report, Jocko, all these great things. but I got to play and really got to know a lot of great people
Oh man,
as well that really enriched me, and then a lot of them are gone now. Like when I think about it, like Chick Corea was very supportive. He was a very sweet man and really encouraging to me. Like it blew me away. Like
really? Well,
kind of went out of his way to be nice. It's like, and Horace Silver was like an adopted father. We hung out all the time, and he would tell me stories. I mean, just the stuff that I learned, and then Joe Sample was a guy that I loved.
oh yeah, killing player.
And yeah, so I mean, and so at the end of the day, I was able to hear great music, see great music, know great music. So it's my job now to keep putting it out there.
Absolutely.
I don't have any plans to be in Europe right now, but there are people that are trying to get us to come there.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. Yeah, I mean, like Europe. I mean, Karizma or something would be amazing, man.
Well, there's a possible plan. Like I said, there's some people in Italy that are actively trying to book something across Europe. So, all that information will be on our website, and on the website is links to everything, all of this. We have quite a nice YouTube channel. There's a lot of vintage stuff there. There's some I don't know if you've seen some of our documentaries.
Yeah, I mean, I watched some of.
Yeah,
Sometimes I cook and I put it on. Yeah.
We try to put new things up there all the time, but and then occasionally we'll do a live stream performance from here. We were doing more.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't done one this year yet, but we'll have to do one because that's for all of our fans that aren't in LA.
Exactly. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, I hope you get to Europe. I'm close to Italy, so if you're ever here, just drop me a line, and we have a guest room here, and we live in a white wine region. So if you like white wine, then
Right on, man.
exactly. So we can hang and everything, but super. David, I'll leave you a nice afternoon slowly for you.
Thank you, brother. It's wonderful to meet you and talk with you.
And thanks so much for sharing some of these stories.
My pleasure.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much.